Welcome back to the Atlanta Startup Podcast. My name is William Leonard, your host for this afternoon, and I am really excited to be sitting down with Devon Rifkin, who is the founder of hangers.com. Devon, welcome to the podcast.
William, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Devon, we've got a lot to unpack. You have such a unique story of building, scaling, and exiting hangers.com, which we're really going to unpack that today and a lot of the lessons learned from your perspective. But I think the best place to start with is an introduction, into your background and in your journey of deciding to forego college for the workforce. I want to hear about that story and just all about Devon.
Cool. Well, I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I'm a third generation Miamian, and I never had a good experience in school. And so I just always sort of innately knew that I wanted to go into business. I could definitely benefit from school and benefit from going to college, but it wasn't my learning style. And so if you judged a fish by how it climbed a tree, kind of thing, and everything with school is sort of standardized, if my view wasn't to become a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or something where I need a piece of paper, it wasn't that I was trying not to go to school. It didn't turn me on at all. And I was also fortunate I have cousins all over the world. I've traveled extensively all over the world, and I think the greatest part of my education has come from doing and traveling. So somehow made it through high school and decided that I was just going to start working. I ended up meeting a girl when I was 18 years old, told her the day that we met that we were going to get married. Her name was Heather. She's my wife today.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Which I'm really proud about. And so we were both very career focused, and we stayed together for a few years. I then moved to New York to become a stockbroker. We stayed together the entire time, saw each other monthly, spoke daily, but it was really about our careers. At the time, she was a buyer with Bergdorf Goodman and Sachs on the apparel side. And so I actually moved to New York and worked for the Wolf of Wall Street firm, the actual firm that the movie was based upon, at the suggestion of a relative of mine who knew the owner. That was all I knew. And I just thought, hey, I'll drive up to New York. I'll live in a hotel until I get on my feet. I'll learn how to sell. And that was sort of what I did for the next couple of years until we all found out, really what that firm was about. And you either were fine with it or you weren't fine with it. I wasn't fine with it. And so I moved into Manhattan and got a job at Oppenheimer as a stockbroker. Try talking your way into that one when you hadn't gone to college and you had worked for that other firm. But I'm so proud of that time because I learned so much. I don't want to say more or less, but just different than I would have learned in college. Interestingly enough, my six best friends, who are my best friends through today, all went to Ivy League schools. And so part of why I think I lost interest in high school was because while I was in ninth grade in regular classes, they were already at University of Miami, because they had exceeded the curriculum. I couldn't even be with them on campus. And so I ended up living on a lot of their campuses, in Cambridge or at Columbia, New York, or at Dartmouth. And I saw, these kids are really, really smart, but half of them don't even know how to cross the street. And so it gave me the confidence in myself just based upon my character and ability to forge forward based upon who I thought or knew I was at the time.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so you didn't go to college. Many of your friends did go to these Ivy League schools. You found yourself on campus with them oftentimes, spending time with them. Where did the idea for hangers.com originally it was the Great American Hanger Company. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'd originally bought the name hangers.com, which is a pretty neat story, and then had thought there's a need to create an umbrella sort of Great American Hanger Company,
Mhm.
which I'll discuss. But to answer your question directly, we were such wannabes. This is in the mid 90s for all the guys that had really made a lot of money on Wall Street in the stock market. And you could clearly see, or I could clearly see, that commissions were dropping and things were headed to e-trading. And so I decided to move back to Miami and figure it out. And I was working for my dad in his warehouse. He sold mannequins, racks, store fixtures. It's a business that his father had started, a small business. And I was in the warehouse one day, and a jewelry store owner walked in, and he was there to buy showcases, as jewelry store owners do. And he asked, "Do you guys sell hangers?" And the answer was no. I went over to him and I said, "I think we could procure some hangers. Just give me a week." And this guy ended up buying $500 worth of wooden hangers. And I thought he was nuts. I mean, $500 worth of hangers. I mean, wow, that kind of got my head. And then hangers are something that everybody needs. You don't really know where to get them. You either don't care or you care a lot about your clothes. And I've always sort of said they're like pens. They just sort of end up in your drawer. You're not quite sure how. And then I thought, wow, this is a universally recognized item that everybody needs in one fashion or another. Knowing I wasn't going into the family business, I decided to leave, got married, bought an apartment with the little savings that I had, and started the business all within a year. I then jumped on a plane and I went to China for 3 months to learn everything I could learn about hangers.
Wow. And this is, it's so fascinating how you went back to Miami. You worked with your father in his warehouse for a bit. And this gentleman comes in one day and has this huge order for hangers. What was your wife's reaction, your family's reaction to, like, Devon, you wanted to get into the hanger business? What is this about? What was there any pushback from your family about that?
Yeah, there was sort of like, why wouldn't you stay in the family business? But that was never the deal, nor did I want to be in that business. And I was way too stubborn. And so I have the gift. I mean, something that, I just don't take for granted, that I have always had the most supportive parents. I mean, for them to support me not going to college, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, when you say, pretty much all of your friends went to college, everyone went to college. And so they were very supportive, pretty limited downside if it didn't work, and a pretty big upside if it did. And as I sort of explained, think about it, retailers need hangers, not just for use in the stores, but also for resale in other stores for people to take home.
Right.
Closet companies, hotels, all of these, on and on and on. Everybody needs hangers. They said, give it a shot. So I did. I went to China. I borrowed $30,000 against this apartment that we had just bought, and gave it a shot.
Wow, that's awesome. So you go to China. I think you said you were there for about 3 months, spending some time, boots on the ground, building relationships. Did you have the confidence that this was going to turn into something when you went over there? What was that moment for you where you felt like, okay, I'm here, I'm actually doing this, I can turn this into a viable, cash flowing, revenue generating business?
But I think the first thing that gave me confidence was that this was an existing product in an existing industry that in some form or fashion must have been working
Mm-hmm.
to a certain degree. This is at the time when domain names were really, people started buying them and talking about them. And I said to myself, I want hangers.com. So I reached out to the person that owned the name after I got back. He was in Washington, D.C. His name was Nat. He says, it's yours for $250,000. I mean, he may as well have said $20 million or $20,000. I didn't have any of it. And I had said to him, listen, man, I had lied. I said, I'm just trying to open a dry cleaner. I don't really need the name, but I love the name, and built a relationship with him. And at the end, I had told him that, I was really just trying to start this hanger company, and it would be great to have it. And I ended up buying the name for $10,000. And I remember my friends making fun of me, not in a judgmental way, but in a, what, are you out of your mind? It's a ton of money. It could go nowhere. And so once I had secured that name, I thought, you know what, I've got as good a shot as any as making this a pretty big business if this whole domain internet thing is going to work out. And I think it was at that moment that I realized I had a real chance once I had actually convinced him to sell me the name.
Right. Right. And so this was, it sounds like this was in the 2000s, early 2000s timeframe. Is that about right?
This was February of 1999,
Okay. Okay.
and started the business October 19th of 1999.
Wow. Yeah. And
Right
right.
there. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right as the internet and this .com boom was starting to happen now. And as you think about hangers.com, as you began to get the business off the ground, it sounds like this became or was an international company from early on. And how did you think about globalizing your business and achieving global scale and in maintaining that scale as you sort of scaled the business from day one?
So great question. My vision was global. My vision was huge, because that's just the way that we're all sort of trained to think, that bigger is better. And I got my first big dose of reality when I realized that shipping of hangers, they're weighty.
Mhm.
So I might be getting requests from all over the world, but until I've got a true logistical system to be able to support that with inventory in various places, it actually started very regionally in Miami. It started by my knocking on a door of a tuxedo company, Cicino's Formal Wear in South Miami, right off of Sunset Drive. And I went in and I met the owner, and he gave me his first order. And at that point, I really didn't have the money to bring in my own container. So I started buying hangers. Again, this was an existing industry from a company called International Hanger out of Austin. And so they took from their inventory, printed Cicinos on it, sent it to me. I shipped it to him. And so that was how it started. And then a lot of requests would come in through hangers.com. And so here was the thought. I'd come up with this concept for college hangers, licensed, you have 50,000 kids at University of Florida. How many of them need hangers? They all need hangers. But that was ego. That was, I want everybody to know what I'm doing. I want to be known as the Hanger King. I want this to be huge. And then I sort of thought at the time, that's ego. I mean, why not focus on what's already working from a foundational perspective? Let me bring in hangers that are already selling. I'll know pretty much what I'm buying them for, what people are buying them from me for, and build the base by wholesaling hangers. So I started by doing that, and then started selling them to companies or reselling them. And then I built it from there. And then from that inventory, I could also entertain a one-off homeowner or shop owner coming to me directly. And then I'd say, oh, we have 20 different styles that I can sell to you. And that's pretty much how it started.
Right, right. And you did a really great job explaining the scaling of operations globally there. How do you think about scaling the people side of the business, team, hiring talent? What were some of your do's and don'ts around, we're running this business, we're operating internationally, we should do this about hiring, we should not do this about hiring. Any insights there for founders? Because I'd say a decent amount of our audience are centered around early stage, seed stage, Series A type founders who are at this inflection point of they need to scale their teams now. They're getting capital. It's time to scale, build out a team for specific functions within the business: sales, marketing, operations, finance. How did you think about that?
So I think the answer actually lies in something that you brilliantly said, that I so seldom hear. And that is, you use the word we. when it was myself for the first year and a half. I
Mhm.
always had a we mentality and always felt that it's people that run businesses, it's people that make businesses successful. And so I always felt and still feel very strongly that the team member comes first. I don't even feel comfortable using the word employee because we're all in this together. It's a we thing. So to me, there became a joke around the office. We're just this piddly little hanger company. It never got much bigger than that. Even when we sold it, we were still by definition a small business, but people would say, gosh, it's easier to get a job at the FBI or the CIA than at this place. And I was thinking, when I was working in these other places in New York and wasn't really recognized and things were promised to me, I thought, these people just really don't care.
Mhm.
And when we started growing the business, these are team members that were with me more than they were with their family. So number one, I feel very strongly that team members always come before customers, because if team members are happy, your customers have a shot at becoming happy. And the second thing is that as passionate as I was and am about the team, I always made it very clear that I was thrilled to fire someone. I was thrilled to fire someone because if I'm making a promise to somebody coming in that this is the vision, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to do everything we can do in our power to succeed. If I allow a B player on my left and a C player on my right, or someone that used to be an A player that's now a B player to be there, what is that? What message does that send to the team in terms of their future? So what you're asking and hitting upon is, to me, what was most important to me, and that was hiring. The other thing in hiring the right people was, I think that interviews are just very canned and stuffy. It's kind of interesting. People are like, I got to hurry up and interview somebody so we can kind of get back to it. There is no getting back to it. That is it. And so I would always open up and just say, whenever to somebody that I was interviewing, and I interviewed everybody up until maybe we had 80 or so people. Interviews are uncomfortable. You're probably nervous. I might be a little bit whatever. This is a two-way, this is a conversation. Let's have a conversation. And immediately you can kind of get the essence of who someone really is when approaching an interview like that. So, there are a number of things in there, but I think critical because it's people, at least up until now, until we move forward a little more with AI and, things really, humans really taking a backseat, that run businesses.
Yeah. No, that's great insight there, Devon. And I can agree with the point about interviews. I mean, I don't think anybody enjoys an interview because, like you said, it's so canned, oftentimes very scripted. And when you can sit down and have a conversation with someone, I think that's the way to get to know someone authentically. And you get to see that person for their true self. And so I can agree and resonate with that 100%. Um, and as you think about, you reach this inflection point of you're operating globally, you're probably generating a few million in revenue now, you've got a team with you. When did the thought come across your head of maybe I need to exit the company? Maybe we could sell this thing. We've got a huge opportunity. We're solving this core problem in the market. We've got a real shot here to exit. Have a successful exit, should I say.
I had started the business with the goal of selling it. And I've learned some lessons since that I'll share. But and the reason is because nothing lasts forever. I'm certainly likely don't have what it takes to, I might be a great starter, I might be great in another level up, but I think one of the real challenges that founders deal with is they were great at different stages, and then it's very difficult to step back and sort of let go. So for us, from the end of 1999 until September of 2008, we had never had an unprofitable month. And the reason that we had never had an unprofitable month was obviously the business model was working, but there are two schools of thought. One is, I'm going to get these huge offices and all these warehouses and hope to fill them. The other school of thought is, I'm going to grow the business and earn the right to sort of get to the next level in a more conservative way. And there's other reasons for that. You don't give up as much of the business. You don't need as much capital. The other thing is, you would think traditionally that hangers are a very low margin item because they're a very basic meat and potatoes item. And usually someone's working on a 5% gross margin. Our average gross margin was close to 75%. And the reason it was 75% was because I was very selective not to just expand for the sake of expanding beyond hangers. It would have been very easy to start with store fixtures and closet systems and all these other things. But most importantly, by design, I never let our biggest account become more than about 3%, 4% of our sales. And I also tried with the internet, all these orders coming in on the internet, to have the majority of our business be credit card instead of having, all of this money on the street. So the reason that I led up to 2008 was, we're at 60, 70, 80 people. We have facilities in China, facilities in Reno, facilities in Miami. And we had condensed everything, built a big facility in Savannah, a new corporate office in Miami. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, Lehman Brothers went out of business and the Great Recession hit, and we were faced with some really serious stuff. So up until that point, we were the darlings of everything, this award, that award, but now it was a matter of survival and going back to the basics. So the thought of selling the business at that point took a back seat. And my first big lesson was, holy shit, there are a lot of things out of my control here.
Did you, throughout the business and building the business, did you take on venture funding? What type of capital funded the business?
Yeah, it was completely bootstrapped. It was grueling. Of course, it was easier, before I had 3 kids and my wife and the whole thing. But we reached a point in 2005 where I learned from a mentor that, finding money is, kind of easy. It's really more the character that comes with it and who you're surrounding yourself with. And if you find the right investor, they're going to want to help you beyond just, likely want to help you beyond just their investment. So there was this guy that invested in the business. It wasn't a ton. I said, I want the right to buy back 50% of your stock. He kind of thought, there's no way you'll be able to, so fine. And if you do, great. But he introduced me to a bank that ended up giving us a major line of credit from that. And then a year later, when I was able to buy out his 50%, I had told him I wasn't going to do it because I felt that would be in the slap in the face to the spirit of how we were holding hands and working together. The other thing that I'll tell you is that I traveled to China 60 times. And the reason I went there so much was I wanted to learn. I knew that if I sat in a room, what I was saving in the negotiation was far greater than the cost of the trip. But also it gave the factories confidence that I was going to be back. And I was very complimentary and thankful of the incredible job that they did, instead of just going over there as an arrogant American. And so my point in telling you that is that they ended up offering me credit. In addition to the investment I got from the investor, in addition to the bank, they gave me credit, which was unheard of. And I would sooner kill someone than not pay them on time.
Right.
And so that was how I was able to grow the business without seeking much more investment.
Yeah. I think an underlying gem in what you just shared was proximity and relationship to your partners is so important. Because, you went to China 60 times and them seeing your face, you establishing that relationship, building that relationship, maintaining it, allow them to do something that they typically don't do, especially when they're operating with businesses halfway across the world. So I think that can really trickle down to the startup founder listening to this today of be close to your customers, like physically, like go see your customers, shake hands with them, look them in the face, um, get that feedback. And same with your partners, whether it's a banking partner, or any other type of channel partner, maintain and cultivate that relationship. So I appreciate that insight there, Devin.
Spot on. And I think also there's such a there is such an incredible power in the willingness to be vulnerable. We're all people. And when I travel there and talk about family challenges, friend challenges, health challenges, challenges in the United States, what's going on with your family, really culturally, you have to know what you're getting into, because there are some pretty strong cultural norms in other countries that you can't just make assumptions on. But I think when you approach people just as a human being, and you stay close to them, it just opens up a world of possibilities that are different than, just putting the face on that we all put on. One other thing, if I may, back to hiring. We all, for the most part, buy into such prescriptions. Like everything is so prescriptive. This is how you hire somebody. This is how you interview somebody. I could tell you some of our best hires came from being in a restaurant and just really appreciating the way that the waiter or waitress was interacting with me. One time, the best salesperson I ever hired was with her boss in front of me on a plane. We're sitting in the back of the plane. I could hear how she just had it. She had IQ, she had EQ, she was respectful, she was a good listener, but she was holding her ground with her boss. And I slipped a note to her. I was right behind her. I slipped a note to her and I said, please don't be, well, one, I think you're terrific. I'm not a psycho. Don't be offended by my approach, but I really wanted the opportunity to have a conversation with you. And we ended up working together for, I think, 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
And so there are just unorthodox ways of doing things, whether it's on the interviewing side or on the customer side or on the vendor side.
That's awesome.
Your point. Yeah.
That is such a great story. And so looking forward now, you had so many accolades when you were running, hangers.com, right? I think you were Entrepreneur Magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year, 3-time consecutive Inc. 500 fastest growing company, and Inc. 5000 as well. What are you doing today, present day, after you've sold hangers.com? Where can we find Devin at now?
Well, I just want you to know one thing. I want to dispel this myth of awards, and there's definite, we could have the imposter syndrome conversation, because I've very much lived in that. But when you read, when I was younger and I would read about all these people, in my lack of experience and immaturity, I would think they were successful because they had a good idea, they worked hard, and they got it all right. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but when you're reading about people, it was literally the week after I'd won that Entrepreneur of the Year award, and the economy had crashed. And I remember distinctly just sitting in front of my office with everybody inside waiting for me. And I was crying because we were faced with this great recession. And so they're not talking about that in the magazines. The people aren't just opening up about that, but every entrepreneur experiences something heavy like that. And there's a real mental toll that it plays. I just wanted to mention that because I think we all put on a face. And things are so interchanged today between personal and business and 24/7 communication and whatnot. What I did the night I sold my business, getting to your question, my dream was always to rent a beach house in California, because I just worked so hard and really dedicated myself when the kids were younger. And so the night I sold my business, went out to California, convinced someone to let me rent their place that summer, went out, hung out. And I think the stress of the day was, do we spend 2 hours or 7 hours today looking for sea glass? And when are we going to when are we going to have a barbecue? Came back to Miami, decided that we wanted to leave Miami, spent the next few years looking where to move, came to Atlanta. And to be honest, like I didn't jump into something right away, not because I had some dollars and some breathing room, but because I was so burnt out. I was so burnt out, and I very quickly looked back at where I spent my time in the business and thought, shit, I ended up spending 90% of my time in areas that I'm either not good at or I hate. And that was what burnt me out, aside from the Great Recession and whatnot. So I thought, what would the 90-year-old billionaire say? The 90-year-old billionaire would say, I would trade it all tomorrow to be in my 40s, and I'd spend more time with my kids. So I had committed the last 10 years since I sold my business to consulting, which doesn't excite me so much, but I also don't get so pulled in, start something for the sake of starting something, and really spending time with my kids because I'm never going to get those years back. And so inevitably I would consult with people on startups. I would also consult on reorganizations and restructuring, since I went through that the hard way for 4 years when we went through the Great Recession. And inevitably my superpower and my love is people. It's working with people. And so consulting would usually turn into working one-on-one with a CEO to really discuss how difficult and terrifying and exhausting and scary and all of it that we all know, but we just don't. So that up until about 2 years ago is what I had been doing. And then I started a new business called the Humaan Group. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Man, that is what an incredible story and journey that you have had of building this company. And it sounds like you've always been really a builder and a relationship connector as well. And Devon, I think you just gave our audience so many unique insights and gems just around company building, taking risks, building and forging and maintaining relationships with partners, thinking about talent, hiring, taking risks around, slipping a note to somebody on an airplane that you met. And I just think this was such a fascinating episode. And how can one of our audience members who maybe wants to reach out to you or touch base with the Humaan Group, what is the best way for them to do that?
So they can call me directly at 305-992-3707 or email me at Devon, DEVON, at humaangroup.com with 2 A's, HUMAAN group.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. And I would love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Devon, we appreciate your insights today. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much for having me.